Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It's about that time. The 2025 high school recruiting trail really starting to heat up, and Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles set to have a massive recruiting weekend this weekend in Tallahassee. Want to have the conversation about top visitors that will be on campus, give you guys some of my thoughts and opinions on some of these players, but more importantly, having the conversation and hopefully putting to rest the laziest narrative that's going around in college football right now, and that is Mike Norvell is too reliant on the transfer portal, cannot recruit the high school ranks, and it's something that I couldn't think is more wrong. And I'm really excited for Mike Norvell in this 2025 class coming off a phenomenal season in the fall to kind of put that narrative to bed. And you talk about how Mike Norvell has gone about building this Florida State. He is using the transfer portal, and that is not a bad thing. You look at the transfer portal and you look at all the talent that goes into the portal, you'd be foolish not to use it, right? Dabo Swinney sitting there not using the transfer portal. It is significantly hurting that program. Mike Norvell and this Florida State program have probably been the most successful Power 5 program in using the portal. You look at the difference makers from the last 2 years, guys like Jared Verse and Keon Coleman, who have come into this program and massively helped it win games in the fall. The transfer portal is an avenue where you want to use to build your roster, but make no mistake about it, you still want to be building out really, really strong high school classes. And you look at Mike Norvell in that 2024 class that they just signed. I mean, it was a top 10 class, probably could have been a top 5 class, had a few late flip commitments knock on their way. And so you look at the 2024 class, a lot better than I think a lot of people give it credit for. But I think a lot of Florida State fans are looking at this 2025 class and saying, this is the class that can really be special for Mike Norvell. And there's really 2 reasons that I think jump out to me. One, this is a program that's extremely attractive, right? A lot of these high school kids looking at this Florida State program and the success and just the feel around the program. This is where they want to, they want to go play the football for Mike Norvell. You've heard it a lot on the recruiting trail. Mike Norvell is a phenomenal relationship builder, but just as importantly, you look at Florida State and who they go to battle with on the recruiting trail. Alabama without Nick Saban, I mean, this is an opportunity for Florida State not only to carry the momentum that they've had the last couple of years, but more importantly, going up and kind of beating out Alabama on the recruiting trail on a more consistent basis without Nick Saban. And you've already seen Florida State get to work on Alabama's roster in the transfer portal. And there's a couple of guys that we're about to talk about that were former Alabama commits that have decommitted as Nick Saban has left this program. This 2025 class feels extremely special. To me, it feels like Florida State has a very, very special opportunity to build a very strong class in 2025. Want to get into the visitors. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Florida State fans. This has been a program that's been a blast to talk about over the last couple of weeks in the transfer portal. Many of you guys know I love talking roster construction, breaking down these commitments. The amount of support you guys have shown truly means a lot. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into the visitors for Florida State. And the first guy we got to talk about is a former Alabama commit who's decommitted from Alabama. And it sounds like Florida State is in the driver's seat in this one. That is 5-star wide receiver Jamie French. Now, turning on the film with Jamie French, like the 2 things that really stand out to me is, one, you can see just the natural athlete he is. He's a phenomenal basketball player, has a track and field background. So the ball skills in terms of the body control and playing above the rim and making some of those contested catches and tracking the football from that basketball background, you certainly see on the film. And then you see the track speed on the film for sure. What makes Jamie French, I think, special is that he's a guy that is extremely smooth in terms of his movement skills. And that is after the catch, but also before the catch, right? Before the catch, creating separation, being a quarterback's best friend and getting open. But then after the catch, I mean, devastating. He's not just a linear track athlete. He's a guy that can vary his speeds, change direction at a very, very high level. That's kind of what makes those wide receivers special. And you talk about the success that a lot of NFL wide receivers are having. They're having it because they know how to run routes. They know how to get in and out of their breaks and create separation. I think Jamie French is kind of that guy. And there's a reason he's a 5-star wide receiver, but I think his most special trait is his ability to not only create separation, but make people miss after the catch as well. From a physical trait standpoint, he's checking a lot of boxes, but he's also an extremely polished route runner. I think that's what intrigues me the most about Jamie French. And again, a former kid who is committed to Alabama. Nick Saban leaves. Sounds like Florida State is in prime position to maybe run away with this recruitment. And the next guy I want to talk about is another guy that was committed to Alabama and decommits after Nick Saban retires. And Florida State's right there. And this is, I think, a trend that you're going to see, because we're going to talk about a few other guys who are from Alabama and Georgia, a state that Florida State is starting to kind of infiltrate. Without Nick Saban playing a role, I mean, Florida State can get in these recruitments on a more consistent basis. Now, Zion Grady, really, really impressive. I remember talking about him when he committed to Alabama, 34 sacks in only 30 varsity high school football games. I mean, the production is truly incredible for a guy like Zion Grady. And I think what I like most about him is the versatility that he brings, right? When you're talking about what he can do, he's a guy that can drop back in the flat and operate in space, tackle running backs in the flat, drop back into those shallow zone coverages because he has the length and athleticism to operate in space, but also a guy that is extremely dynamic as a pass rusher, can be that stand-up outside linebacker, could put his hand in the dirt and play that 4-3 traditional edge rusher spot, can do a lot of different things. Obviously, is extremely physically gifted. You're not a 5-star top 30 kid nationally if you're not gifted. Zion Grady would be a difference maker as a pass rusher, uses his burst and bend extremely well, but also has the power to go right through tackles. And when you're checking off both of those boxes, that's kind of what makes you a very special pass rusher. Another one, that former Alabama guy that I think Florida State trying to move in on the recruiting trail. Next guy I want to talk about, and another not committed to Alabama, but another guy that's from the state of Georgia, a guy that Alabama would be playing a role in, and that is 5-star linebacker Zaden Walker, who's also going to be on campus. The way I describe Zaden Walker is probably just a heat-seeking missile, maybe apex predator, if you will, a guy that lines up all over the field, can come off the edge, can play that off-ball linebacker spot. He is the modern-day linebacker that he has good length, can get his hands up in those throwing lanes, can carry tight ends up the seam, can tackle running backs in the flat, can play extremely physical between the tackles, take on blocks, stack and shed them, go sideline to sideline. Again, a reason he's a top 5 prospect in the high school in the 2025 class, a guy that's checking a lot of boxes, and a guy that, again, I think Alabama would be playing a role in. But without Alabama having Nick Saban, I think this opens up another opportunity for Florida State to move in. I know the players are Auburn, Georgia, and Florida State for Zaden Walker. And then Florida State's right in there with Zaden Walker as well. And the last guy I want to talk about really quick is Jaylen Wiggins, who just committed to the Florida Gators this weekend. Talked about him. Very, very special athlete, right? 6'4.5", 250 pounds, has that growth potential to probably play on the inside when he gets to college. Now, the reason I want to talk about Jaylen Wiggins, and it kind of has to do with the same conversation we had with Nick Saban in Alabama, is I wouldn't be surprised if you got some guys who are committed to the Florida Gators. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Norvell stays on those guys, because what could happen in the next 8 months? I mean, Billy Napier's on the hot seat. He's going into a 2024 season where Florida has the hardest schedule in all of college football. There's a very real reality where Billy Napier is not the coach during signing day in December. And so what is Florida State probably going to try to do is stay in it with a lot of these guys who are committed to the Florida Gators. And if and when Billy Napier is out at Florida, I mean, Mike Norvell is probably looking at that as a massive opportunity to kind of poach some of the top talent that would be going to the Florida Gators. So you look at not only, and this is kind of my take on it, not only is Florida State a very attractive team that has a ton of buzz around it heading into this recruiting cycle, but more importantly, some of the top teams that Florida State is going to be going up against on the recruiting trail, the Florida Gators, might be making a head coaching change relatively soon. Nick Saban just retired at Alabama. 2 of the main competitors for the Florida State Seminoles on the recruiting trail have a lot of question marks within their program. There is no question marks about Mike Norvell in Florida State. He obviously just got the extension. So you're selling the kids, not only can you come and compete for a team that is going to win conference championships, compete for national championships, but also know that coach is going to stay around. There's not a ton of teams across college football that can kind of sell that, right? Mike Norvell is going to be there for your time at Florida State. Billy Napier, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, they can't necessarily say that. And I think the combination of both of those represents a very exciting opportunity for Florida State on the recruiting trail. You're already seeing a ton of talent that'll be on campus. We could have talked about 30 to, I think there's about 20 guys that are going to be on campus. Wanted to kind of pick my top couple I wanted to talk about. You're seeing Florida State get an early start. They already got 4 commitments, a top 11 class in the country right now. This could be a really special class for the Florida State Seminoles. And finally, putting to bed the narrative that Mike Norvell cannot recruit out of the high school ranks. We'll leave it at that. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.